Most people wouldn't think twice about helping a stranger at a gas station. But sometimes, the smallest acts, the kind that take just a few seconds, come back around in ways no one could ever expect. That morning, she was just an ordinary woman on her way to work. She saw a man at the pump fumbling for his card, realizing he'd left his wallet behind. Without hesitation, she smiled, waved off his apology, and paid for his gas herself. She didn't know his name, or that she had just changed her own life forever. Because the next morning there was an envelope waiting at her door with a name she'd recognize anywhere: Jasonstatham. Before we continue, a huge thank you to everyone who's been watching, liking, and sharing these stories. Your support helps us bring moments of kindness, courage, and humanity to life, showing that even in a hard world, good people still exist. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, because every episode here reminds us that no act of kindness ever goes unseen. Mornings weren't gentle with Kate anymore. They used to be, back when weekends meant pancakes and music, back when the house smelled like cinnamon and the calendar had white space. Now they were alarms and half-charged phones, coffee that tasted like resolve, and a to-do list that multiplied when she blinked. She pulled her hair into a loose bun with one hand and packed a lunch with the other, moving through the kitchen like someone who knew every creak in the floor. The fridge hummed. The toaster stuck. The second-hand radio on the counter sang an old song through static. She smiled anyway. "Shoes soft," she called, voice soft but carrying. "Bus in 5. Her daughter rounded the corner with a backpack that looked like it carried textbooks and the weight of tomorrow. 17, all elbows and determination, she had her mother's eyes and her father's stubborn streak, the good parts of him, the kind Kate chose to remember. Sophie slid onto a stool and bit into a bruised apple. "You working late?" "Only till 6, Kate lied. The diner always ran long when the weather turned warm and the highway got loud. "How's the chemistry quiz?" "Manageable," Sophie said, which was how she said "don't worry about me. I've got tutoring after school. Mrs. Valdez says my application essay is strong." College. The word lived in their house like a small, sacred thing. Sophie had circled the nursing program at the state college on a brochure and tucked it under a magnet like a promise she made to herself. Kate touched the brochure sometimes when no one was looking, like maybe the ink would rub off on her fingertips and turn into money they didn't have yet. "I'm proud of you," Kate said. Sophie smirked. "You say that every morning." "I mean it every morning." Kate kissed the top of her head, grabbed her keys, and wished the day would be kind. Outside, the neighborhood yawned awake. Sprinklers ticked across tired grass. A dog barked at nothing. The sky wore that pale blue that meant the heat would come later and burn the afternoon thin. Kate's 10-year-old SUV coughed on the first try but settled into a shaky idle. She patted the dashboard like it was alive. "Come on, Moose," she said. "One more day, buddy." She dropped Sophie at the bus stop with a wave, then pointed Moose toward the diner. The low fuel light blinked on, another small red eye wanting attention. She checked the time. She could spare 5 minutes. The gas station at the edge of town had a loyalty pump that sometimes shaved off a few cents. Cents mattered. The lot was half empty, the morning rush gone, leaving behind the smell of gasoline and coffee. Kate slid her card from her wallet, the one with the cracked edges and the adhesive where a sticker used to be, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear with a thumb blackened from yesterday's coffee grounds. She liked this hour, when the world was mostly polite. Pump 3 beeped. "Insert card," the screen commanded, bossy as always. She did. The pump thought about it, groaned, then declared her card unreadable like it was her fault. She tried again. The pump grudgingly accepted the offering. As fuel thumped through the hose and the numbers ticked higher, a black SUV rolled in at pump 5 and stopped in that careful way people park when they respect their vehicles or the world around them. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out wearing a dark jacket and a sleep-soft t-shirt, the low morning light turning the edge of his jaw to steel. Kate didn't notice him at first, just the way you don't notice a lamppost until you need light. She focused on the pump, on the math in her head, on the calendar with rents circled and underlined. Then, in her periphery, she sensed a presence. Not the kind that makes you tense, the kind that settles a place down. He reached for his pocket, patted one side, then the other. His brows knit in that universal face of "Oh, you've got to be kidding me." He checked his console, glove box, a quick, faint laugh at himself, the kind a person makes when they're not angry at the world, just amused by the part their brain forgot to play. He walked around to the passenger door, looked again, and came up empty. He checked the pump screen, then glanced toward the convenience store where two teenage clerks were restocking the cooler with a tragic lack of urgency. He exhaled through his nose, like a man who had a flight to catch and not much patience to spare. And then he looked at Kate. It wasn't an ask with words. It was a small lift of the chin, an apology in his eyes, that universal sign for "sorry to bother you, can I ask a favor?" People used to do that more, Kate thought. Ask kindly, trust strangers. She met his gaze and smiled before she realized she was doing it. He smiled back, the sort of smile that didn't insist on itself. A thank you before the question. "Morning," he said, voice low and warm with London rain. "This is going to sound daft, but I left my wallet at the hotel. Phone, S in the console without the pay app logged in. Any chance you could spot me a tank? I can transfer you on the spot plus extra for the trouble." If he'd been slick or smirking, if he'd been one of those men who made the world smaller when they walked into it, she would have said no. But he was apologizing even as he asked. And this was the kind of problem Kate understood. Life loved to forget the small, important things. She opened her mouth and heard her mother in her own voice. "It happens." "Really?" Relief flashed across his face, tempered by humility. "I swear I'll make it right." She waved it off. "Pay it forward, that's how my dad taught me." He tilted his head, studying her, then nodded once like the line meant something to him too. "All right then, I will." The pump timed out while they were talking. She swiped her card again, entered the zip code she knew better than her birthday by now, and chose the cheapest grade. He reached like he might take the nozzle from her, but she shook her head and handed it over with a little theatrical bow, because humor makes everything less strange. He laughed, genuine and small. "Appreciate you," he said, and the way he said it with a quiet sincerity made the words feel heavier than a routine thank you. While the tank filled, they stood in that companionable silence strangers sometimes share when the world slows down long enough to remind them it's not always cruel. Up close, he looked familiar in that way certain faces do when you've seen them do impossible things in 2-hour increments on a screen. But Kate had never been the type to shove a phone in someone's face and ask, "Aren't you?" Life had taught her to give people their privacy, even when they lived in public. He glanced at her SUV. "How many miles you got on that?" 212,000 and change, she said, proud and embarrassed at once. "Good soldier," he said. "Looks like it's seen a few wars." "Feels like it too some mornings," she said, then immediately felt silly. He doesn't need your car monologue, Kate, but he smiled like he knew exactly what she meant. He held out his hand. "I'm Jason." "Kate," she said, shaking it. His grip was firm without trying to be, the kind that said he did manual things in a digital world. "Thank you, Kate," he said, and there was something about the way he said her name that made it sound like a promise kept. "You'll find it again, this kindness. It comes back." "Maybe," she said, because hope was a thing she handled carefully these days. The pump clicked. He replaced the nozzle screwed on the cap and looked at the store again like he might go in and find an ATM, fix the imbalance he felt at accepting help. She stopped him with a look. "Let it be," she said. "You'll ruin my good deed." He huffed a quiet laugh. "Wouldn't want to do that." He opened his door, then paused. "You said pay it forward, I will." "I know," she said, and she did. "Some people you just know." He climbed in, gave her a small wave through the windshield, and pulled out into the slow stream of morning traffic, the SUV rolling away like a memory you don't want to end. Kate finished her own fill-up, checked her bank balance on her phone, winced, and drove to the diner humming a tune the radio had tried to sing. She didn't think about the money again. It wasn't much, not in a life measured by rent, but it was what she could do, and doing what she could had kept her afloat more than once. The diner opened to the smell of bacon and stories, truckers whose roots had become second addresses, two retirees who solved the world's problems one crossword at a time, a young couple sharing a plate and a dream. Kate moved through it all with the grace of a person who knew that being seen was as nourishing as being fed. She didn't tell anyone about the gas. Not to brag, not even for the anecdote. It was a small thing between strangers, and the world had taught her that small things turn into anchors when you hold them close. By noon, she'd wiped down 14 tables and refilled 46 coffees, give or take. She'd found a crayon under a booth and remembered Sophie at 5, drawing suns with too many rays. She looked at the clock and counted down to the moment she could take her break and call the bank about the overdraft fee she was pretending wasn't coming. Between orders, she checked her phone for the time and found a new email from the state college. Subject line: scholarship windows and deadlines. She stared at it for a second before she had to tuck the phone away to carry a tray of fries and promises. At 3, the manager didn't come back from smoke break and the rush arrived early. Life loved its little jokes. By 5, her knees hurt and the universe had thrown a ketchup bottle at her favorite blouse. She laughed anyway. It always won when she did. At 6:20, she clocked out 40 minutes late and drove home with the windows down, letting the evening wind wash the diner off her. The sun slid low and gold, the kind of light that made everything look like it had a chance. Sophie wasn't home yet, study group night. Kate used the quiet to do dishes and hum to the old radio and straighten the brochure on the fridge again. She read the bold headline, Nursing, Care as Calling, and whispered, "We'll get there, baby, somehow." The doorbell rang just before dusk, 3 quick knocks like someone with a schedule. Kate wiped her hands on a towel and went to the door expecting a delivery she couldn't remember ordering. No one stood on the porch, just a square of sunset and an envelope propped against the mat. She stepped outside. The street held its breath. Kids' bikes lay abandoned on lawns. Somewhere a dog negotiated with a squirrel. Parked at the curb, half in shadow, was a black SUV idling quietly, the kind you couldn't tell apart from a dozen others until you cared to. Kate glanced left, then right. A neighbor checked their mail and waved, oblivious. She looked back at the envelope. Heavy paper. Her name written by hand in neat block letters, Kate Murray, like someone who didn't waste ink on flourishes. No return address. Just a seal pressed in the corner. A tiny circle with 3 initials she didn't recognize at first, not because they were unfamiliar, but because sometimes life writes in capital letters what you're not ready to read. J.S. Her stomach fluttered like a bird startled from a branch. She lifted the envelope, felt the weight of it more than a card, less than a book, and glanced at the SUV again. The driver's silhouette was steady behind the glass, not moving, not intruding, just present like the idea of a lighthouse when you reach the harbor. Kate stepped back inside and closed the door, hands shaking now for the first time all day. She leaned against the cool wood, laughed once, a soft, unsure laugh, because what else do you do when your life nudges you from the side and says, "Pay attention"? In the kitchen, she set the envelope on the table like it might break if she wasn't gentle, and sat. For a long moment she just looked at it, the way you look at a horizon before you decide to walk toward it. Then she slid a fingernail under the seal and opened it with the patience of someone who knew you only get to do a thing for the first time once. Inside was a thick folded letter on cream paper, and a second smaller envelope with Sophie's name typed clean across the front. The first line of the letter stared up at her in that same tidy block handwriting. "Kate, you told me to pay it forward. I don't argue with good rules." She read the words twice without breathing. The room tilted. The world became a point of light at the end of a long tunnel. She turned the page. There were words about foundations and bridges built quietly, a line about strangers and mornings and the kind of strength that keeps other people from falling. Near the bottom, a sentence reached out and steadied her. Enclosed is a scholarship award for Sophie, full tuition, books, and a stipend, administered through a fund that prefers silence to headlines. Her throat closed. The radio fizzed. Somewhere down the street, the SUV's engine murmured like a secret being kept. Kate wiped her eyes with the heel of her hand and picked up the smaller envelope. She didn't open it yet. She pressed it to her chest and laughed again, this time with a tremble of disbelief and the bright, sharp edge of joy. She walked to the front door and opened it. Evening had slipped into the soft blue that makes every porch light kinder. The SUV still idled. Its headlights did not flash. No window rolled down, but the driver's hand rose once in a small, almost shy wave, a thank you and a you're welcome, wrapped together. Kate lifted her own hand in return. The letter pressed against her heart and whispered into the quiet that carries far on summer nights. "Thank you." The SUV eased away like it had never been there, like miracles prefer the exit to the curtain call. Kate stood in the doorway a long time, holding the envelope, knowing that when Sophie got home, the world would tilt again, not into something easier maybe, but into something possible. She closed the door, leaned her forehead against it, and let herself cry the private tears you save for the moments when the universe reminds you it has a memory. On the table, the letter waited, a bridge between a kindness at a pump and a future with a door swung open. Kate took a breath, picked up the smaller envelope with Sophie's name, and called into the quiet house that had never felt so full. "Baby, hurry home." Sophie burst through the door a half-hour later, cheeks pink from the cool evening air and hair wild from the bus ride. "Mom, you'll never guess. Mrs. Valdez thinks I could get the state scholarship," she said. She stopped when she saw her mother at the table, eyes glassy, a folded letter trembling in her hands. "Mom." Kate turned, smile soft but wobbly. "Come here, sweetheart. I think you should see something." Sophie frowned, dropped her backpack, and crossed the room. Kate slid the smaller envelope across the table. Her daughter turned it over, her own name in crisp type, the paper thick like it carried something more than words. "What is this?" Kate exhaled. "A thank you from someone I helped yesterday." Sophie looked skeptical but opened it anyway. Inside was a letter printed on the same cream paper. "Dear Sophie, the world runs on quiet strength, people like your mother who give without expecting. She helped a stranger at a gas station. She didn't ask who he was or what he could offer back. That kind of grace deserves a return. Enclosed is confirmation of a full scholarship to the State College of Nursing, funded through a private foundation. Use it well, help others the way your mother helped me. J.S." A single glossy certificate slipped out and landed on the table. Sophie's breath hitched. "Mom, this isn't real." Kate laughed through her tears. "That's what I said." They sat in stunned silence while the refrigerator hummed and the world beyond their walls kept turning, blissfully unaware that everything inside had just changed. Sophie traced the initials at the bottom. "Wait, J.S. Mom, who did you help?" Kate swallowed. "Just a man at the gas station. He forgot his wallet. British, polite, I paid for his gas." Sophie blinked. "Mom, Jasonstatham." Kate's lips parted in disbelief at hearing it aloud. It can't be. But somewhere deep down she knew it could. That night they sat side by side on the couch, rereading the letter until the words blurred. Sophie searched her phone, comparing the handwriting to scanned autographs online, her jaw dropping with each match. "Mom, it's him, it's really him." Kate pressed her hand to her mouth, half laughing, half crying. "He said he'd pay it forward." Sophie turned, eyes shining. "He really did." Kate looked at her daughter, this girl who'd grown up watching her mother patch holes in both socks and hope, and whispered, "See, sweetheart, goodness finds its way home." The next morning, the sunrise felt different. Kate brewed coffee without rushing. She let herself hum, the same tune that used to fill the house when life wasn't so heavy. Sophie sat across from her filling out scholarship paperwork she technically no longer needed, grinning through it. The phone rang mid-morning. The caller ID showed a London number. Kate hesitated, then answered, "Hello." A woman's voice, calm and professional. "Mrs. Murray, this is Helen Brooks. I manage the Forward Foundation. Mr. Statham asked me to confirm you received the package." Kate nearly dropped the phone. Yes, we did. Please tell him thank you. I don't know what to say." Helen chuckled gently. "He said you've already said it. You told him to pay it forward. He just followed instructions." Kate closed her eyes, tears spilling freely now. "Please let him know it changed everything." "I will," Helen promised. "He also asked that you don't feel indebted. Just keep doing what you do. That's thanks enough." When the call ended, Kate sat for a while in silence, heart full and steady. She thought of that morning, the empty gas station, the sunlight on chrome, the man who had smiled like he understood the weight of small kindnesses. A week later, an envelope arrived from the Forward Foundation. Inside was a second note. "Kate, Your gesture reminded me of a time someone once helped me when I didn't deserve it. I learned then that gratitude isn't paid back, it's paid forward. Thank you for reminding me why that still matters. Jason. She framed it, not out of fan pride, but because it was proof that the world still worked if you gave it the chance. Months passed. Sophie's acceptance letter came in May. The whole town turned up for her graduation, teachers, neighbors, even the diner regulars. When Sophie walked the stage, Kate cried the way mothers do when everything hard suddenly feels worth it. At the reception, Mrs. Valdez hugged her. You and Sophie earned this. Kate smiled. We had a little help. 2 years later, Sophie was thriving in nursing school. On weekends, she volunteered at the children's wing of the hospital. One afternoon, she helped a young mother struggling to fill out insurance papers, her hands shaking from exhaustion. Sophie smiled softly and said, "Take a breath. It's okay, I've been there." Then, without thinking, she added, "Let me cover your parking today." The woman tried to refuse, but Sophie insisted, "Just pay it forward." As she said it, she heard her mother's voice in her own. Back home that night, Kate sat on the porch watching the sunset melt over the trees when Sophie pulled up in her old SUV, still running, still faithful. She sat beside her mother, handed her a cup of coffee and said, "I paid it forward today." Kate smiled, "Tell me." Sophie did, and when she finished, Kate laughed softly. "That's how it goes, baby. One small good thing, then another. Then the world starts spinning right again." They sat quietly for a while, listening to the cicadas buzz. A few months later, Kate got a letter postmarked from London. No return name, just a seal. Inside, Mrs. Murray. Word travels. I hear your daughter is doing beautifully. I'm grateful I met you that morning. Reminded me that fame fades, but kindness doesn't. Keep the circle going. J.S. Tucked behind the note was a photo. Jason beside a group of hospital volunteers, smiling, holding a banner that read, "Forward Foundation because every act counts." Kate traced the printed letters, tears warming her eyes. She didn't post about it, didn't tell anyone outside the house. Some things were meant to be kept between souls who understood what goodness could do when it wasn't looking for credit. She just pinned it to the fridge next to Sophie's college schedule, the two papers side by side like chapters of the same quiet miracle. Epilogue. The years rolled gently after that. Sophie graduated top of her class, became a pediatric nurse, and started a fund of her own, small, local, anonymous, helping single parents cover tuition fees for their kids. She named it the Pay It Forward Fund. When a journalist once asked where the idea came from, Sophie smiled and said, "From a gas station and from my mom." The story never made the tabloids, never trended. But that was how Kate liked it. Because kindness isn't supposed to make noise. It's supposed to make change. Sometimes life tests us with small moments, the kind we could easily walk past. But those tiny choices ripple farther than we'll ever see. Kate didn't help a famous actor. She helped a person. And in doing so, she reminded the world that compassion doesn't need an audience. Because the truth is simple, good deeds always return. So the next time you get the chance to help someone, do it. You never know how far the echo will travel.